I see Black people as superheroes because we keep rising. And so for me, that was an immediate connection, and I understood why I kept feeling the idea of superheroes, because for me, that is Black people's superpower. The idea of, regardless of whatever the obstacle or the struggle is, we keep rising, rising and rising and flying. TERF, which is the idea of brotherhood. What does that look like? When it's a rite of passage where they start out as young boys, and then they start getting a little older, a little more cockier, and then and then they get hit with this idea of like being a Black man in America, and then they have to negotiate themselves through that. They also are protecting each other in the midst of that. So while Malik was jumping, Tim was protecting him along the way.
The idea of seeing a Black man as innocent is not something that we see on a regular basis, right? So anytime you watch the news and one of us get shot, that they demonize us immediately, yeah? So that we automatically look like the other.
I wanted to show we are dimensional. Black men are dimensional. Black boyhood is there's an innocence there, just like there's an innocence in every other boyhood.
It's always refreshing for me now to step out and for you to just see me smile. Wow. And to just have a moment to like really just be innocent and be 5 again.
Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Don't shoot!
When 17-year-old Trayvon Martin died at the hands of George Zimmerman in 2012, protests sprung up around the country.
When do our children get to just be children?
Trayvon Martin was a 17-year-old boy. He was shot and killed by George Zimmerman. George Zimmerman thought Trayvon had a gun, but Trayvon didn't have any weapons. Some TV channels and newspapers demonized Trayvon Martin. Demonized means that they made it look like Trayvon did something wrong. George Zimmerman did not go to jail.
So Trayvon Martin is a young man that is 17 years old who actually was killed by a neighborhood watch person, George Zimmerman. He's seen no weapons or anything, but he said he looked suspicious. And Trayvon Martin was killed because he looks suspicious, and we are demonized because later they started going back into Trayvon Martin's life and started going back in his history and explained his past, his childhood, and all of these things were being brought to light in the trial, which had nothing to do with he was in 2012 when he was murdered.
Tamir Rice was a 12-year-old boy. He was shot and killed by 2 police officers. Tamir was outside his house playing with a toy gun when he was shot. Some TV channels demonized Tamir. Demonized means they made Tamir look like he did something wrong. One of the police officers lost his job. Neither of the police officers went to jail.
Tamir Rice? Well, Tamir Rice was a young man, 12-year-old boy, in November 22nd of 2014, who was shot and killed by Cleveland, Ohio Police Department. The police officers arrived at the scene. They arrived within feet of Tamir Rice. And the young boy went in his pocket, in his waistband, and within 2 seconds, this young boy was shot and killed. Well, these things, again, how that part shows out is this: he was labeled as an active shooter. Tamir Rice was labeled as an active shooter, a 12-year-old boy with a fake gun. I can give you a related story to that, is that just recently, last week, I was at St. Joe's Hospital, and my wife was having surgery, and it was late, and I went down to the cafeteria to get something to eat. And so I had a skull cap on, because it was cold outside, but then I had a skull cap, and I had my hood, sweater on. I put my hood on and went down the hallway, got on the elevator, and as I got on the elevator, there was 3 white women that was in the elevator, and they seemed to all like stand against the wall in the elevator as we rolled down 1 floor. And that just kind of gave me another kind of insight to how people view me and others as black men, and they feel that we are some type of a threat. And so these are some of the things that we're okay with. Society's okay with when they see young men like a Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, and the list goes on of young people who have been shot and killed. And so those are some of the things that I feel really disheartened about, because we are viewed as a threat and we're perceived not to be innocent, and we are demonized. How I feel that a Camille Brown artistic view of really telling her story, I love it. The CCAs that we have been doing these lessons have been great. Today was really good. The kids talked about this whole idea of the turf, what that meant, and they were talking about the having fallen and still getting back up. That tells me about resilience, and African American over the years have been a resilient people because we've had to be. We keep coming. Regardless of what goes on, we keep coming. I love this conversation. I love the using a dance and music, what kids love, to be able to spark conversation about what's going on in our society, especially with our young boys and our young people of color.